Alexander Volkanovski is truly a short king. Alexander Volkanovski showed this weekend that he is truly on a different level by demolishing Yair Rodriguez and finishing him in the third round. Alex has shown that he is above and beyond anyone at 145, and with a potential rematch against Islam Makhachev, he can show that he's on a different level at 155 as well. And I think a big reason as to why Alex is so good is because of his very unique physique and body type. Volk has some pretty insane dimensions and physical measurements. Despite only standing at 5'6", Volk boasts a crazy 71.5-inch wingspan, and I'm sure many people have seen these pictures of Volk's wingspan in comparison to fighters much taller than him that really show how freakish his dimensions truly are. And despite his opponents, Max Holloway, Yair Rodriguez, and Islam Makhachev all being 4 to 5 inches taller than him, Volk has had the reach advantage in every single one of those fights. And everyone has probably heard the story by now, but Volk at one point was 214 pounds, again at 5'6", playing rugby, and it's pretty evident that that strength has carried over in his MMA career. These very unique dimensions definitely show themselves as strengths in the striking department. Volkanovski's insane reach must be so weird to adjust to, considering he is so much shorter than his opponents. Every striking coach has said that the strategy for the taller fighter should always be to keep the shorter fighter at range. This is with the assumption that the taller fighter does have the longer reach, and thus most taller fighters think that when they go up against a shorter fighter, they truly have the reach advantage as they've been conditioned to think this way. But obviously, as we've seen with Volkanovski, this strategy goes out the window as soon as the shorter fighter has the longer reach. With these crazy dimensions, Volkanovski has shown that he can often keep his opponents at the end of his punches and stay at range where he can hit his opponent, but his opponent can't hit back. Prime example of this was his third fight against Max Holloway, where he put on a striking clinic and fully utilized his reach advantage. He kept putting Max at the end of his strikes, and along with good footwork, his reach kept Max away from being able to answer back. Additionally, because of his short frame, Volk is just naturally a smaller target, which means opponents are essentially limited to going to his head. I really haven't seen anyone go to Volk's body because I just think it's simply a harder target to go for. And speaking of hard targets to go for, Volk's short, thick, pitbull type neck makes him so hard to submit. I remember everyone saying ahead of his fight against Islam Makhachev that once Islam gets Volk's back, it's all over for Volk. And even in the fight in the first round, when Islam got Volk's back in the last minute of that round, I really thought it was all over. But again, Volk's crazy dimensions helped him ward off any attacks to his neck. His neck is both short and wide, making any submission to his neck practically impossible. His neck being so short makes it hard to get under the chin, and his neck being so wide makes it so hard to get one's arms fully around his neck. This insane neck of his has also been shown to be tough in submitting in the Brian Ortega fight. Who could forget the third round when Brian Ortega had Alex in the scariest position he's ever been in his career. Brian Ortega had Alex in an extremely deep guillotine choke, a submission Brian is known for, but Brian Ortega still couldn't get a good grip on Volk's short, stubby, and wide neck, and Alex was able to get out of this position and went on to beat Brian down. And I also wanted to mention the idea of punch resistance because of a shorter, wider neck. I've seen some conflicting reports online, so take this with a grain of salt, but the long-standing idea is that having a shorter, jacked neck means lesser likelihood of being knocked out. This is kind of backed up by the logic of the brain getting knocked around less, as the shorter neck is able to keep the brain steady as opposed to a longer, skinnier neck that's more susceptible to more of a whiplash effect when punched to the head, which leads to the brain going through the cerebral fluid, hitting the skull, and getting knocked out. The logic seems correct, however, the actual significance a shorter neck has to KO resistance in comparison to a longer neck is to be argued, but I just thought I would mention it here, as this could be the reason why Volkanovski was able to eat this nasty head kick by Yair Rodriguez in their fight. But if we go back to submitting Volk's neck, you first have to take him down, which in and of itself is a huge problem given his shorter stature. Every American football coach has said that being short has the advantage of having a lower center of gravity, meaning it's harder to take that person down, given that their weight and mass is so low to the ground. And obviously, this idea also holds in MMA as well. Volk is a very hard dude to take down because of all his weight condensed into a very short package. Shorter legs makes it hard to grab onto for a takedown, and his center of gravity being so low means he has a strong base that makes it hard to topple over. I was rewatching the Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski fight, and even though Islam was able to take down Alex, he had a very tough time taking Volk down from the standing position. But in many Islam takedown attempts, Alex was able to stuff them or make them very difficult using his strong, short stature and low center of gravity. Finally, a great point made by the Weasel, which I wanted to expand more on here, was Alex's ability to stand up in an opponent's guard because of his short legs. Normally, when a fighter is in someone's guard, they can't really stand up and strike effectively because they're on their knees. In contrast, Alex's legs are so short, he can completely stand up and land effective shots in the guard because his power is fully generated through his legs and his hips as opposed to being on his knees. We saw this briefly in the Yair fight, but we really saw how effective this position was in the Islam and Ortega fights. Starting with the Islam fight, when Alex was able to knock him down late, he was also able to stay in his guard standing up and was pouring down crazy amounts of damage in the last couple of seconds of this fight. And again, in the Ortega fight, Alex stood up in Bryan's guard at the end of the third round and laid down some punishing damage standing in this position and beat down Bryan so bad to the point where his corner had to pick him up at the end of the round and carry him to his stool. And obviously those examples weren't the cleanest. Alex in the Islam fight was still kind of on his knees, and Alex in the Ortega fight kind of broke out of Ortega's guard by that time. But still, I think his short, strong legs give him the ability to stay low and still deliver some damaging shots at this position. In conclusion, Volk is a beast representing short people all around the world. I think naturally we assume that being shorter is a disadvantage in fighting, but Volk proves time and time and again that he's able to make his body type an advantage and his greatest strength. There's been online discussion with which body type is the best for fighting, and there seems to be a majority of people who think the tall and lengthy fighter has the best build for fighting. However, I think Volk shows that the shorter, stocky, and also crazy long reach guy is just as effective as any other body type. And I think in general, any body type can be effective in fighting, and I think that's the most beautiful part of the sport. Unlike most sports where there is really only one body type that dominates, in fighting, anyone of any build can fully take advantage of their body and its dimensions by fighting in a style that complements that body type. I mean, look at the current champions now. You have tall and lengthy guys like Israel Adesanya at 185 and John Jones at heavyweight. You have Volkanovski down at 145 with his very long arms and jacked body. And you even have Jamal Hill, who looks like this, who is the current 205 champ. So what do you guys think? What type of build is the best for fighting? Is there any one particular body type that dominates? In my opinion, I think the gorilla build, like described in this comment, has a lot of benefits as showcased in this video and by Volkanovski. But again, I think any type of body type can succeed with the right style. But anyways, again, thank you for the support. Peace.